My name is Pansy Bentley, and I'm writing this from my childhood bedroom. The same room with fading posters, dusty trophies, and walls that once felt too small. Tonight they feel even smaller. It's strange how a place you outgrow can still be the only place you have left to fall apart in. If you had walked in moments ago, you would have found me sitting on the floor, clutching a box of old keepsakes, wondering how I managed to ruin the one relationship that ever felt steady. But if I'm being honest, I already know the answer. It started with my mother. Eric Ward and I had been together for 2 years. We'd moved into his apartment 8 months earlier, a warm, quiet space where everything had its place, and nothing was ever chaotic unless I brought the chaos in myself. He wasn't dramatic or flashy. He didn't make a show of love. He lived it. He meal prepped for both of us on Sundays, remembered my preferences without being asked, and once stayed up until 3 a.m. fixing my laptop because I was terrified of missing a deadline. Eric didn't shout. He didn't belittle. He didn't keep score. But according to my mother, that was the problem. He's too comfortable, she'd say whenever I visited home. A man who really loves you should fight for you, chase you, fear losing you. Her voice became a second conscience, whispering doubts I never used to have. Every time Eric didn't reply to a message right away, her words echoed. Every time he said he was too tired to go out, I wondered if I'd become forgettable to him. I should have remembered something important. My mother has been divorced twice. Her expertise was more fear than wisdom, but I didn't see that then. 2 weeks ago, she visited. She watched Eric and me move around our home together, the way he quietly brewed my tea when I had a headache, the way he excused himself early because he had a 6 a.m. shift the next morning. And somehow she twisted all of it into evidence. That Sunday night, she pulled me aside. "You need to test him." I blinked. "What?" "A real man chases the woman he loves. Walk out during an argument. If he follows, he's yours. If he doesn't, well, then you have your answer." "That's manipulative," I tried to argue. "It's protection," she insisted. "Every woman in our family has done it. My grandmother tested my grandfather the same way they were married 52 years. She wore me down, slowly, steadily, inch by inch. By the end of the night, her certainty felt like truth. I didn't realize I had accepted a poison disguised as advice. Last Tuesday, I followed the script she planted in my head. The fight I started was ridiculous. Something about Eric not planning anything special for our anniversary, which was 6 weeks away. He looked confused at first, then hurt. "Pansy, I literally showed you the reservation confirmation last week." "It's not about the reservation," I snapped. "It's about how you make me feel." He paused, really paused. Not defensive, not dismissive, just thoughtful, calm. "Okay," he said softly. "What do you need me to do differently?" That wasn't how it was supposed to go. My mother said he'd get flustered, emotional, desperate. Instead, he stayed himself steady, grounded, honest. So I escalated, and escalated, and escalated. "You know what? Forget it. I'm leaving," I said, grabbing my purse. "Maybe when I'm gone, you'll realize what you had." I slammed the door and drove to a grocery store parking lot. It was nearly empty, lit only by buzzing fluorescent lamps. I sat there waiting for the script to continue the way my mother described it. 1 hour went by. No call. 2 hours. Nothing. 3. Still silence. By hour 4, the anger evaporated, and dread took its place. What if something had happened to him? What if he was hurt, sick, unconscious? What if he needed me? I drove back, heart pounding. What I found wasn't a crisis, just 4 cardboard boxes stacked neatly by the front door. My clothes, my books, my toiletries, my life with him condensed into corners of corrugated paper. Eric sat on the couch, hands clasped loosely, gaze steady. "What?" My voice cracked. "What is this?" "You left," he said. Not coldly, just factually, quietly. "I assumed you were done. I packed your things to make it easier." "I didn't mean it," I whispered, panic tightening my throat. "I only said I was leaving to see if you'd, realize what you had." His expression shifted, not anger, not hurt, something closer to disappointment and worse, recognition. "That's a test," he said. "I don't chase people who play games. It was just a fight I begged. Couples fight." "No, Pansy. You manufactured conflict to see how I'd react. That's manipulation. I don't do manipulation." The quiet in his voice hurt more than shouting ever could have. "I'm sorry," I said, tears burning down my cheeks. "It was my mom's idea. She told me to do it." He nodded slightly, as though that explained everything and nothing at once. "I know your mom has her own ideas about relationships," he said, "but you made the choice to act on them. That's on you. Please, just give me another chance." He shook his head. "You should go." And just like that, the life we built was over. I drove to my parents' house, sobbing so hard I could barely see the road. My mother opened the door and pulled me into her arms before I even stepped inside. "He kicked me out," I cried. Her response, "Good. Now you know he never really loved you." Something cracked inside me when she said that. A small fracture, subtle but deep. A warning I didn't understand yet. Because that night, sitting in my childhood room, I finally allowed myself to wonder, what if Eric wasn't the one who failed me? What if the problem had been growing roots long before he ever came into my life? I used to think the worst part of a breakup was the moment it happened, the shock, the heartbreak, the unraveling. But I was wrong. The worst part is the week after, when every consequence you set in motion comes back to greet you, one by one, like ghosts lining up to show you what you destroyed. My mother treated the breakup like she had predicted it, like she'd been waiting for Eric to fail so she could nod and say she was right all along. "Any man who packs your things that fast was already halfway out the door," she declared at breakfast, sipping coffee like a queen, surveying ruins. I kept my eyes down. Or maybe he has boundaries. She didn't respond. She didn't even acknowledge the possibility. She was already on her phone, tapping furiously, her brows tight with purpose. That alone made anxiety twist inside my stomach. A minute later, she slid her phone across the table toward me. "I messaged him," she said. My blood ran cold. "Mom, what did you do?" "He needs to be told," she insisted. "Someone has to hold him accountable." On her screen, the text read, "This is her mother. You owe my daughter an apology. She made one small mistake and you threw her away. A real man fights for the woman he loves." I felt the world tilt. "Why would you interfere?" "This isn't your place." She lifted her chin, "Because clearly you won't defend yourself." 20 minutes later, Eric responded respectfully, but firmly. "Ma'am, your daughter admitted she tested me. I don't apologize for having self-respect. Please don't contact me again." My mother's face twisted. The audacity of this man. "He's right," I whispered. Her head snapped toward me. "What did you say?" "He's right," I repeated louder. "I'm the one who manipulated him." She scoffed like she'd tasted something bitter. "You're letting him win. He has you brainwashed." "No, I just finally see it clearly." For the first time in my life, saying those words felt like choosing myself. My father, who'd been quietly reading the newspaper, set it down. "That's funny," he said without looking up. "I remember you testing me the same way." My mother's lips thinned. "That is not the same." He met her eyes. "It's exactly the same. You played those games for years. That's why we divorced." The silence that followed was suffocating. My mother stood and left the room without another word. She didn't speak to either of us for 2 days. By then, the guilt inside me felt unbearable, heavy pulsing, impossible to ignore. I didn't expect Eric to want me back. That wasn't the point. The point was telling him the truth, without excuses, without hiding behind my mother's voice. So I texted him. "I know you probably don't want to hear from me. I'm not asking for anything. I just want to apologize sincerely. I played a game. I hurt you. You didn't deserve it. I'm sorry, and I wish you well." When his response came, it was gentle and final. "Thank you for the apology. I hope you find what you're looking for. Please don't contact me again." A clean wound, honest and straightforward, and somehow that made it hurt even more. When my mother found out I apologized, she lost her mind. "You groveled to him," she shouted, "after how he treated you." "He didn't treat me badly," I said quietly. "I treated him badly." Her voice rose. "I did not raise you to be a doormat." "No, you raised me to test people until they failed." Her expression froze, not with anger, but with something far more fragile, fear. She didn't understand how I'd gotten away from her script. But the fallout was just beginning. My phone started ringing nonstop. My aunt, my grandmother, a cousin, a family friend. Each had the same sympathetic tone. "Sweetheart, I'm so sorry about your awful ex. I can't believe he threw you out like that. It must have been devastating to learn he never loved you." With every call, I corrected them. With every correction, they refused to believe me. My mother had already told them, her version dramatic, embellished, and entirely false. It wasn't until my younger sister reached out that the truth finally got air. She'd messaged Eric directly to defend me. She expected him to be a monster. Instead, he replied with a single devastating sentence. "Your sister played a manipulation game your mother taught her. I chose not to participate." My sister came straight to my room, her expression pale. "Pansy, so what does he mean Mom taught you?" I told her everything. The test, the advice, the pressure, the twisted justification. I expected her to be shocked. Instead, she went disturbingly quiet. Finally, she said, "You know Mom did the same thing to Dad, right? And to her second husband." I froze. "What?" "She kept journals," my sister said. Pages of strategies. Stuff like, make him jealous to keep him interested, or walk out during a fight. If he doesn't chase, he doesn't love you. I found it once. My throat tightened. Why didn't you tell me? I didn't know how she whispered, or if you would even hear it. I sat on my childhood bed, the weight of decades crashing over me. My mother didn't just influence me. She shaped me. She sculpted my expectations of love. She planted the seeds of sabotage long before Eric ever entered my life. And for the first time, I understood something terrifying. What happened with Eric wasn't an isolated mistake. It was inherited. A legacy of manipulation passed down like an heirloom. A legacy I had just repeated. A legacy I had to break. But breaking something that deep comes with consequences I wasn't prepared for. 3 weeks after this breakup, I thought the worst had passed. The crying, the shame, the endless replays in my mind of everything I could have done differently. All of it had finally started to dull. Not disappear, but soften. Enough for me to breathe without feeling like needles were scattered in my lungs. But then word reached my mother that Eric was seeing someone new. I learned it the normal way, quietly and directly, through a mutual friend who approached the subject with all the caution of someone defusing a bomb. Hey, just so you know, Eric's been seeing someone, a nurse. Seems nice. It hurt. Of course it hurt. But I didn't rage or spiral or collapse in a heap of heartbreak, because I knew what I'd done. I knew who had lit the match. And I knew Eric didn't owe me a waiting period after I detonated our relationship. But my mother, she reacted like he'd committed a war crime. 3 weeks, she screeched, pacing the kitchen. 3 weeks, and he's already with another woman. That proves he never loved you. No, I said calmly. It proves he's allowed to move on. I'm the one who destroyed everything. She ignored me, because the truth wasn't useful to her narrative. I should have known then that she wasn't done making everything worse. That afternoon, Eric sent me a screenshot. A message from my mother to the new girlfriend, Lily, a woman neither of us had ever met. You should know the man you're dating kicked out his girlfriend of 2 years for no reason. He's emotionally abusive. Be careful. My stomach dropped so hard I felt physically ill. I called my mother immediately. What is wrong with you? I'm protecting other women, she snapped. Someone has to warn her. By lying. By harassing strangers. Mom, you're not protecting anyone. You're obsessed. She hung up on me. 15 minutes later, Eric texted again. I need your mother to stop contacting people in my life. This is harassment. I don't want to involve lawyers, but I will if I have to. Shame washed over me in a wave so deep it felt like drowning. I apologized. I promised him I'd handle it. Handling it meant confronting my mother with a level of honesty I'd never dared express before. I drove to her house, walked straight into the living room and said, "This has to stop. You're attacking people because you don't want to admit you were wrong." I was trying to help, she said, her voice trembling with indignation. No, you were trying to prove you were right, and you're hurting people, Mom. Strangers. Me. Yourself. She pointed a finger at me. You're choosing him over your own mother. I'm choosing reality, I said. And if you contact him or anyone in his life again, I'm going no contact. Her face crumpled in disbelief. Manipulators always look confused when their tricks stop working. But I meant every word. Unfortunately, she didn't believe that. 3 days later, Eric texted once more. Another screenshot, another message sent to Lily from a fake profile. My mother had created an alias just to continue her crusade. Lily finally snapped. She posted publicly on her social media. To the mother who keeps messaging me about my boyfriend, I've seen the screenshots. I know the real story. Your daughter admitted she played a manipulation game. Please get therapy and leave us alone. The post spread fast. People we knew shared it. People we didn't know shared it. The comments filled with speculation, disbelief, and eventually, recognition. Because my mother's second ex-husband, the one she divorced 8 years ago, commented under the post. This tracks. She used to test me constantly, walk out during fights, make scenes to see if I'd chase her. After the 15th time, I stopped. She filed for divorce a month later. 15th time. I felt the blood drain from my body. My mother had spent decades rehearsing the same script with husbands, with boyfriends, with her daughters. And the moment the world saw it clearly, everything she'd built began to collapse. Her friend group found out. Her church group found out. Her book club found out. One by one, people she'd influenced for years realized she'd given them the same toxic advice that had sabotaged their own marriages and relationships. My phone rang that night. She was sobbing so hard I could barely understand her. They're attacking me, she cried. They're bullying me. They're ruining my reputation. No, Mom, I said softly. You did that. This is your fault, she choked out. You told them. You made them turn against me. I didn't tell anyone, I replied. Your actions told them. She hung up. The next morning, she posted on social media about healing from betrayal and recovering from people who should have protected her. It lasted 40 minutes before she deleted it after dozens of comments held her accountable. Her collapse wasn't loud. It was quiet, humiliating, and public in the way manipulators fear most people finally saw the truth. I should have felt satisfied. I should have felt vindicated. Instead, I felt hollow. Because beneath all the noise, the posts, the screenshots, the arguments, I finally saw my mother for who she truly was. A woman desperately clinging to a worldview that had destroyed every relationship she'd ever touched. A worldview she had passed down to me like an inheritance. And I was finally painfully beginning to understand the cost of rejecting it. Everything that happened after the public fallout felt strangely quiet. Not peaceful, but muted, like the world was holding its breath. The storm had passed, but the air was still heavy thick with what it left behind. My mother wasn't the same, and neither was I. For the first time in her life, she couldn't spin the narrative. She couldn't twist the truth into a weapon or reshape a mess into someone else's fault. People she'd known for decades pulled away from her. Invitations stopped. Messages stopped. 3 close friends went silent altogether after realizing she'd fed them the same toxic relationship strategies that had contributed to their own divorces. Her world was shrinking, and she didn't know how to live in a world that didn't worship the image she projected. My father called me one evening, his voice low and tired. "Your mother's not doing well," he said. I expected anger in his tone. I expected bitterness. Instead, he sounded like a man who'd seen this movie too many times. "She's devastated. She's telling everyone she's being bullied. She harassed Eric's girlfriend," I whispered. "She lied. She created fake accounts. What did she expect?" He sighed. "Pansy, you know your mother. Admitting fault is nearly impossible for her." For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then he added, "I should have warned you when you were younger." "Warned me about what?" He hesitated. Then the truth came out like a slow exhale. "Your mother tested me constantly. For years. She'd walk out and expect me to chase her. Create fights out of thin air, just to see if I cared. I kept chasing, until one day, I couldn't anymore. A heaviness settled in my chest. It was one thing to know it intellectually, through stories, through hints. It was another thing entirely to hear my father say it plainly. "I didn't want you and your sister growing up thinking love was a battlefield," he continued. "But I didn't know how to explain it without making you resent her, so I stayed quiet. And a generation later, I repeated the same mistake in my own relationship. When I hung up, I sat alone on my bed, realizing that this wasn't just about Eric. It wasn't even about my mother. This was about patterns, cycles, inherited behaviors that lived inside me like reflexes I didn't know I had. No wonder my apology to Eric felt like the first honest thing I'd said in months. It was the first time I'd stepped out of her shadow. But stepping out meant stepping into something terrifying, my own accountability. Therapy wasn't something I ever imagined doing. Growing up, my mother called therapy a waste of money and insisted good women figure things out themselves. But I couldn't trust my instincts anymore, not when they'd been shaped by someone who viewed manipulation as a love language. So I began seeing a therapist. In our first session, she asked, "When did you first learn that love feels unsafe?" The question was so direct it made my throat burn. I didn't answer right away, because answering meant admitting something I had never dared to think. I learned it from my mother. Therapy didn't break me open in dramatic, cinematic ways. It was slow, uncomfortable, like peeling wallpaper and realizing there are moldy layers beneath. But it was honest, and that honesty felt like oxygen after years of inhaling smoke. My sister started therapy too. She told me about it while we sat together in her car, windows cracked, letting the evening breeze cool our faces. "I almost tried to make Mark jealous last week," she admitted suddenly, just to see if he'd react. And I heard myself, and I froze. It wasn't even intentional. It was just muscle memory. We sat in silence for a long moment. "It's like deprogramming," she whispered. "Mom taught us how to sabotage love, and now we have to learn how not to." I reached for her hand. She squeezed back. We both knew it wouldn't be simple. My mother, of course, didn't go to therapy, at least not the real kind. Instead, she checked herself into a wellness retreat and posted about healing from betrayal and rising from the ashes. She included a filtered selfie of herself wrapped in a spa robe, pretending serenity she didn't feel. But the comments weren't kind. People had seen too much, heard too much, connected too many dots. She deleted the post within hours. The retreat didn't last either. When she came home, she tried to frame it as a spiritual transformation, but nothing about her had changed. She still flinched when confronted, still bristled at accountability, still insisted the world had turned against her unfairly. But she was quieter now, softer around the edges. Not humbled, not truly, but shaken. And for once, her voice didn't overpower mine. I set boundaries, real ones, short calls, limited conversations. And the moment she tried to give advice or twist the truth, I ended the interaction. She learned quickly that I wasn't playing games anymore. Eric faded from my day-to-day life, not out of malice, but out of necessity. I unfollowed him on social media, stopped checking his posts, stopped letting my mother's obsession distort him into anything other than what he had always been. A good man, a steady man, a man who deserved honesty. And eventually the ache I felt when I thought of him became quieter too. Not gone, but no longer the center of my world. One morning while I was packing up some old belongings, I found a small note he once left in my work bag. Something simple, something gentle. Remember to eat lunch today. You always forget when you're stressed. E. I held it for a long time, not with regret, but with gratitude. He had loved me in this healthiest way he knew how, and I, shaped by the wrong teacher, didn't know how to receive it. But I was learning, slowly, painfully, honestly. For the first time in my life, I wasn't trying to test love. I was trying to understand it, and that felt like the beginning of something new. Everything in my life felt strangely split now, the person I used to be and the person I was becoming. Not better, not healed, not perfect, just aware. Aware of where my instincts came from. Aware of why I reacted the way I did. Aware of how much of my love life had been written in someone else's handwriting. 2 months had passed since the breakup, and I was no longer waking up with a lump of regret lodged in my throat. The regret was still there, but quieter, softer around the edges. Not a wound anymore, more like a scar I could trace without flinching. In all that time, Eric and I didn't speak once. Strangely, it wasn't the silence that hurt me the most. It was accepting that he owed me nothing, not closure, not conversation, not forgiveness. And that acceptance was its own kind of growing pain. My mother, however, was still in the middle of her own unraveling. The consequences of her actions didn't die down. In fact, they deepened. People she'd known for years kept their distance. Her book club asked her to take a temporary leave. Her church group gently suggested she reflect privately for a while. And her longtime friends, the ones she used to confide in, turned cold after piecing together how her relationship advice had quietly damaged their own marriages. For a woman who lived and breathed social validation, it was a free fall. Whenever she called, she sounded smaller. Not humble, just frightened. Not self-aware, just paranoid. Not apologetic, just desperate to claw back the image she'd lost. "I don't understand why everyone's attacking me," she cried one evening over the phone. "I'm not attacking you," I said softly. "I'm just not protecting you from the truth anymore. You're choosing strangers over your own mother." "No, I'm choosing accountability, something you've never chosen for yourself." There was a pause, long and brittle. Then she whispered, "I don't recognize you anymore." And for once that felt like a compliment. My father and I grew closer in the quiet way people do when they finally put down a burden they've shared silently for years. He started telling me things he'd never told me before, not because he wanted to turn me against her, but because he finally felt safe telling the truth. He told me about the nights she stormed out over imagined offenses, the arguments that weren't arguments until she made them one, the tests she created that he kept trying and failing to pass. "She taught you that love is a performance," he said gently. "But it's not. It's not a series of hoops. It's not a chase. It's not a test. It's partnership. It's communication. It's boring sometimes, but the right kind of boring." It was the first time I understood that quiet, stable love wasn't a flaw, it was a foundation. A type of love I'd had once, and thrown away. My sister made progress in therapy too, wrestling with her own tendencies before they could become real damage in her relationship. "It's like realizing you were raised speaking a toxic dialect," she said one night as we sat on her sofa, "and now you have to relearn the language from scratch." I nodded, but at least now we know it's a dialect. Before we thought it was the whole world. We shared a look, something tired, something hopeful, something like mutual courage. We weren't going to pass this poison down to anyone else. Then, one afternoon, I ran into Eric's best friend at a coffee shop. The timing was cruel. I was wearing sweatpants, no makeup, and holding a bag of cat food because my errands had gotten mixed up. He looked exactly the same, warm, approachable, a little too perceptive for my comfort. He approached me gently. "Hey, Pansy."
"Hey."
The awkwardness hung between us like fog. Finally, he cleared his throat. "For what it's worth, he was pretty torn up about everything. He really did care about you." My chest tightened, but not painfully, just truthfully. "I know," I said quietly. "He deserved better." The friend nodded. "He's doing okay now. Lily's good for him." I'm glad I said, and I meant it. He deserves that too. We parted ways, and I realized something important. I wasn't waiting anymore, not for him, not for a second chance, not for a miracle that would undo what I had done. I was moving forward. Therapy taught me something I never expected. Tests don't measure love, they measure fear. And the people who stay through manipulation aren't proving devotion, they're proving a lack of boundaries. Real love doesn't need to be chased. Real love doesn't require tricks. Real love doesn't collapse just because someone didn't run after you. I had lost a good man because I let someone else's fears become my instincts. But loss doesn't have to be a punishment. It can be a teacher, a boundary, a new beginning. A woman can break a cycle even if she spent years living inside it. So I'm breaking mine. No more tests, no more games, no more inherited sabotage disguised as romance. My mother may never understand what she did to me, to my sister, to herself. But I do, and understanding means I don't have to repeat any of it. Not in my next relationship, not in my friendships, not in my life. One day I'll love again quietly, honestly, without conditions. But for now, I'm learning to love myself.